The following is a Kingfisher Media production.
Hey guys, you're listening to the In the Blood podcast. I am your host, AC Bergen-Fischer, and thank you so much for listening, whether you are a new or returning listener. I'd like to invite you to find a quiet place where you consider what's being shared with an open mind and a receptive heart. Before we begin, though, the following disclaimer. I am not a therapist, and nothing presented here should be considered as therapy. If you feel that therapy would be beneficial, please seek out a licensed therapist who you trust. Hey guys, I wanted to start off today with a couple of very quick announcements. The first is just a reminder that I have accepted the invitation to become permanent co-host of the Estranged Heart podcast. For more information about that show, you can go to theestrangedheart.com. If you would like to listen to the podcast, you can find it available on all major podcast platforms. If you are interested in me or anything I'm working on, either past or present, you can check out my webpage at acfischer.com. That is acfischer.com. And yeah, thank you for listening. I wanted to start off today with a quote from possibly an unusual source. For those of you who know me anyways, I wanted to quote from the Bible, Ecclesiastes 3 verse 1. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose. You know, and this thought about the seasons, you know, how it's a never-ending cycle, really. It's gotten me thinking about how these seasons, how these cycles affect different areas of life. And while the cycle is never ending, unavoidable, and, you know, it's something we can count on, whether we're looking forward to it, dreading it, whatever it is with the weather. I think with my relationships with others, there are also seasons. And while there are probably distinct seasons of getting along, my focus lately has been kind of more on the seasons of not that. So when I think of the seasons of maybe like not getting along-ish, I've broken it down just like the climate seasons into 4 separate categories. You know, what I call the seasons of not getting along. And I've identified those as the seasons of conversation, avoidance, estrangement, and reconciliation. So the first season of conversation, that's, you know, where maybe we're trying to gain an understanding of each other. We are negotiating compromises. We are trying to influence each other's opinions, perspectives. We're discussing boundaries, hopes, expectations, that sort of thing. You know, we're talking. We're talking about anything and everything, not just the things that affect the collective of the relationship, but also the individuals that are involved in it. You know, unfortunately, through the course of these conversations, we quickly learn which conversations we shouldn't be trying to have with the other person, you know? And that's fine. Because, I mean, man, knowing what to put on the table and knowing what to leave off of the table, knowing what to take off of the table, these are valuable things. You know, like understanding that there's certain conversations you shouldn't really have. This isn't a negative necessarily. This is all part of, trying to keep the focus on the functional elements of the relationship. It's about avoiding unnecessary stresses, about not introducing unnecessary threats to the well-being of the relationship. Of course, certain things need to be avoided. Where the problem comes in is when we start finding that there are more topics to avoid than there are topics to address, where there are more conversations we can't have than conversations we can have. And it can become extremely frustrating because, of course, we want to have, with our inner circle relationships, especially, we want to have depth and substance. We want to know that the time we spend together, it's meaningful. It matters. We need to know that we are investing in the other person and that investment is paying dividends. Now, when we are stuck in a position where we can't invest as heavily as we would like, because, in a way, I guess they're just not accepting our currency, if we want to stick to the investment example. If we can't invest, then dividends can't be paid out. We wouldn't expect to go and make a withdrawal from an empty bank account. And sometimes relationships, because we've been forced to avoid so many different kinds of conversations, they end up like that empty bank account. The one that's open. You've got your client card, you've got your bank book maybe, the account number, but the balance is zero. That's not good. And, we get to that point where we are avoiding so much and we are benefiting so little. It's just why am I avoiding all of these topics? Why am I even trying? Why don't I just avoid the relationship altogether? Which leads us into that period, that season of estrangement, where you just get to the point where, out of necessity, I need to maybe take a break from this relationship. Not necessarily a permanent cancellation of your subscription to it, but it could be a case of what? I need some time. And I'm not talking a few minutes, hours, days, or whatever to calm down. Maybe it's not a case of even being agitated. It might just be a case of calmly recognizing that this relationship is not working for me right now. I don't know if it ever will. All I know is that I can't figure it out while I've got it jammed up in my face. So I'm going to have to take some distance from it. I'm going to have to either put this on pause or just hit the stop button altogether. I got to walk away and I need to take a season without dealing with this stuff. I'm going to need to take some time to build a new normal, and what that means is I need to regroup myself. I need to figure out, okay, how do I exist without this relationship in my life? How do I just figure out how to be functional and happy and just generally okay without this person, without this relationship bogging me down? Now, we may find during this season that the relationship is not one necessarily that we want to go back to. And I don't want to say that's fine, relationship is worthless. But I mean, sometimes you're just going to have to figure out how to be fine with it, if that makes sense. But in a lot of cases, we don't estrange from people because we don't care. We estrange from them because we do. And the separation we take from them, it's not intended to be permanent. It's not like we're saying, okay, you're dead to me. It's a case of, look, you're very much alive to me. I love you with all of my heart and soul. And I'm afraid that if we continue the way we've been going, that you are going to end up dead to me and I'm going to end up dead to you. And I don't want that. I love you too much to allow that to happen. So as strange as it may seem, I'm going to do the most positive thing I can for this relationship, and that is to end it. Because continuing with it, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do it in a healthy way. I have to walk away. Now, if we're at all lucky, this season of estrangement, it doesn't last forever. It can very, very often give way to the fourth season, which is reconciliation. Now, reconciliation can take a lot of different forms. For some people, they just go back to normal, you know? It's not to say that going back to normal is necessarily a good or a bad thing. It's just a thing, okay? For some people, they take that period of estrangement and they realize, you know what, all these things about this other person that were making me absolutely freaking mental are things that I realize after having taken some time and distance that these are the things about the other person that I actually most appreciate. I realize that as frustrating as it can be to be faced with these things too much, if I'm not faced with them at all, I feel like something super important to me is missing. And I need that. And so I want to go back to normal. I need to just get back to, you know, I'd rather be irritated with you than be alone. I'd rather be miserable with you than happy with someone else. That might sound kind of messed up, but I think a lot of you probably hearing this, you can relate to that. Some people are just special to us in ways that don't make sense. And sometimes they're special, and sometimes the relationship itself is special because it is broken in certain ways. It's like, well, maybe broken is the wrong word, but I mean, like things that maybe appear on the surface to be malfunctions of the relationship are simply functions of it. They're not flaws, they're attributes. These are things that they may be a little bit tough some days, but we wouldn't trade them for the world. You know, sometimes that season of reconciliation, it's not about going back to normal. Sometimes it's about starting fresh. At least so far as it's possible to start fresh with somebody that we have history with. Maybe we want to talk to them and say, look, I don't want to go back to normal. Normal sucked. Normal wasn't working. Normal had us at each other's throats. I love you too much. I don't want to be at your throat. Maybe we can learn something from the past seasons that we've gone through. We can build on the fact that the season of estrangement left us with an appreciation for each other. We can draw from what we learned in the season of avoidance, that maybe there's certain types of conversations we shouldn't have, but then also building on the foundation of the season of conversation, realizing there's certain conversations that we absolutely should have. Let's just visit all of these things. Maybe we need to redefine the relationship. You know, like one example I had is like I had a family member that I was really, really close to. But part of that closeness was we just happened to find ourselves in each other's business more often than was healthy. We didn't know how to approach each other on a substantial level without getting unnecessarily invested in each other's business. So what we did was we redefined the relationship in the sense like, look, maybe we can't be best friends. Maybe we can't spend like every day with each other. We can't talk to each other on the phone every day, but can we redefine this into a situation we are more like acquaintances, where we can become casual contacts instead of intimate ones? Maybe we want to reconcile through a trial period. You know, maybe we don't know how we want to approach things. Maybe we are just totally in the dark. We don't know what we want out of the relationship. All we know is that we want the relationship. And until we start spending a little bit of time in each other's faces, we're never going to figure out what is mutually agreeable, what like is going to work for both of us. And hopefully through like any one of these approaches, we begin to fix things, you know, fixing things, discussing things, trying to understand each other. Weird thing is, takes us right back to season 1 a lot of the times, which is that season of conversation. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? Because, I mean, if you go back to step 1, it's not like you're necessarily starting over. It's not like you wasted all this time, because your first time dealing with step 1, you were dealing with it from a place of complete ignorance. Like, you didn't know anything. You didn't have any perspective, but having gone through one full cycle of the seasons, when you come back to season 1 now, it's like, okay, I actually know some things now. And maybe I don't know how to do things right moving forward, but I figured out a couple ways that I did do them wrong, ways I'm not going to repeat. So like, while you may not have a clearly defined answer, the list of possibilities of what the clearly defined answer is has now shrunk a little bit. It puts things just a little bit more within reach. So whereas you might end up going through, repeats of the seasons of avoidance, estrangement, reconciliation, back to conversation, every time you come through these seasons and you find yourself back at season 1 of conversation, you're just so much better informed. You're so much better developed. Your understanding of each other is so much better. So it's not like you're stuck on this never ending merry-go-round of ups and downs and happiness and misery and confusion and understanding and value and dismissal. You're actually slowly getting somewhere. You're getting somewhere good. You're getting somewhere where you don't have to go through these seasons like for freaking ever. You can find a place where, maybe instead of dealing with these seasons of relationship dysfunction, you figure out what are the seasons of relationship function. Like, these are things that I'm probably going to get into sometime in a future episode, not today, obviously. But, think about these things this week, think about the seasons of relationship dysfunction that you've experienced. I mean, maybe you would define yours differently. If you would define yours the same way, think about, is there anything that you can do to speed up breaking the cycle? What do these things look like? Is breaking the cycle something that you think is temporary or permanent? Are we dealing with when something changes? Is it just a break in the weather, or is it a change of the seasons? Sometimes we don't know that either. I mean, it can be really easy to start worrying like, oh my God, the seasons are changing. But maybe it's just like, okay, we're having a couple of rainy days and then we're going to be back in the sunshine. We're going to be back to enjoying each other. Let's not blow every single hiccup out of proportion and just assume that winter is coming, Anyways, my hope for all of you is that when you approach your relationships, you're not dealing with too many rainy days. You're dealing with, pleasant weather. I hope that you find yourself enjoying and appreciating each other. And I hope that you can figure out ways to make yourself more enjoyable, both to you and to them. I think that starts with learning to appreciate yourself, learning how to get to know you, what makes you tick, learning how to approach these relationships that matter to you in the highest quality possible way, learning how to treat the other person as though they are as valuable as you want them to understand that they are. It's not enough to look at another person and say, hey, you know what you mean to me, right? You know I love you, right? No, tell them. Not just with your words. Tell them with your actions. Tell them by going through these seasons with them. Maybe even having a conversation about the season with them. Just saying, look, like, I know we've had our ups and downs. I know things just like seem to be running in circles. I don't want to run in circles forever. I'll run as many circles with you as necessary. At some point, I want the goal to be breaking the cycle, though. I love you. Can we do this together? Anyways, I think I'm going to leave things there for this week. So until next time, my friends, much love.